I'm live. All right, what's up? I'm live. I'm just gonna do one question today. Uh, so everybody, what I'm saying, welcome to the live. Doing one question where we just talking about imposter syndrome like usual. You feel me? That's all we talk about on this channel is imposter syndrome and all the different things that comes with it, right? So the main question I want to talk about today is: are there situations where imposter syndrome is helpful? So is imposter, and then people might call it syndrome. I want to call it imposter phenomenon, but I just write syndrome because that's what everybody's familiar with. But is imposter syndrome helpful? Um, that is a good question. Can y'all see that? Can y'all see that right there? All right, cool. So is imposter syndrome helpful? Um, that's a complex question because right now the rave is that imposter syndrome is helpful, right? Some people might look at it as a superpower, right? Let me talk about imposter syndrome real fast. So imposter syndrome, or I'm going to call it imposter phenomenon, is basically right when you have persistent beliefs, right, that you are not good enough. Basically, kind of sum that up, right? So I'm going to talk more about it, what that means, but you essentially mean that you're not good enough. You don't feel good enough, even though you have all the achievements, you have all the accolades, you have all the experience, right? You have the certificates, you have your degree, you have everything you need, and you still don't feel like you belong in a certain space. You feel like you're not enough. You feel like that you don't need to be in a room when you're around a certain group of people, right? And then the key thing that this is imposter syndrome is that imposter phenomenon, imposter syndrome. I'm going to be going back and forth, right? Imposter. I'm just going to say that, but this also, one other key thing I just want to mention is that you have to feel like you're a fraud. You have to feel like you're going to be found out. So if you don't have those key critical things, then that means that you're not going through imposter syndrome. So that's super important for y'all to really understand, okay? But like I said, we just talking about one thing today. We're just gonna say, is imposter syndrome helpful? I saw a couple people talking about how, right, imposter syndrome is helpful because it forced me to do work, right? Imposter syndrome is helpful because I made sure that I was over prepared and I wasn't gonna screw up. That's a bad mentality to have about this phenomenon, right? That's not going to be any good for you. That's not going to do any good at all. Um, so what I really want to dive into here, right, is that overall it's not helpful. All right, I'm looking at my notes here, y'all, because I want to make sure I get everything that I gotta say to y'all. But it's not helpful overall, and there's a couple different things that we want to make sure why it's not helpful. All right, it could definitely hinder your performance. So if you're constantly thinking, oh, somebody's about to find out that I'm fake, I'm faking it, right? I don't deserve this position. They're going to say, damn, you a fake, you a fraud, you a phony, even though you know you're not a fake, fraud, and phony, but you think that in your head, right? Positive syndrome. It's all a mental game, really. But it can mess up your performance. And there's a couple different things that happens, right, when you are thinking this way. Basically, you need to understand that your beliefs, your thoughts can lead to behaviors or actions. That's essentially what's happening here. So because the people that are experiencing a positive syndrome, they actually act a certain way. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's just one of the different things, right? It can lead to what we call procrastination or perfectionism, right? This is some of the things that are happening because of imposter syndrome. Another different thing that can happen is that it could cause stress and burnout, right? You could be dissatisfied with something even though you accomplished something. Once again, these are just all different things that can happen with imposter syndrome. And then lastly, um, it could definitely jack you up because you start avoiding growth opportunities, right? If you feel like you fake and you're a phony, are you really going to try to go for something? Okay. In particular, right, I'm talking to certain different people. Don't be scared. In this case, we focus on a couple different groups. I just want to make sure I focus on those groups real fast. So, like even myself, right? I remember when I was a student, um, high school, college student. You know what I'm saying? I remember those days. That's when the imposter syndrome, especially in grad school, really started to come in and start to overwhelm me in certain places. Because once again, y'all, I'm talking about imposter syndrome because I went through it. I went through it. I know what it's about. I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong in a certain space. It feels like that you constantly have something heavy on your shoulders, like somebody's about to find out that you don't belong in that certain space. They might, and another thing is like you don't want to feel stupid. That's another thing that happens, right? You don't want to feel stupid, so you feel like you feel crazy. That's really what it is. You feel crazy certain points of times when you're going through imposter syndrome. But once again, the question is imposter syndrome helpful? Is imposter syndrome helpful? So I wanted to talk about, right, when I was a student, right, and some of the different things that I was experiencing. Um, like the first thing is, so when I was a student, I avoided speaking up, right, when I was experiencing imposter syndrome. So one tidbit about me, right, is that was I the best student? I really don't know. I don't know if I was the best student. Let me talk with y'all real fast to see if I was the best student, or a good student. So I was a student who was like, okay, I knew I was kind of smart. You know what I'm saying? I knew I was kind of smart. But in certain classes, I would avoid speaking up. So what I mean by that is that I was a student that would either go in the middle or go to the very back of the classroom, and I could know something. If it was something in math, because I got a science background, but something in science or math, I wouldn't say nothing, even though the teacher would ask, "Yo, does anybody know this answer?" I didn't say anything. I don't know if I didn't say nothing because I just want to say anything or because deep down I wasn't sure if I really knew the answer. Found out I did know the answer, y'all. But this is how imposter syndrome can impact you, right? Because once again, we're trying to see is imposter syndrome helpful? And to me, if you're a boy speaking up, is that really going to help you out in the long term? And if you're not speaking up in the classroom, right, that can go so far down the line, right? This thing can start eating at you over time. So where if you're not speaking up in the classroom, where else are you not going to speak up in the upcoming future, right? So you're not speaking up in the classroom, and if you're not speaking up in the classroom, that means you're not participating in the classroom as the best as you can, right? So if you're not speaking up, if you're not participating fully, are you truly growing? Are you growing? Are you reaching your potential? I don't know. I can't really say if you are. That's just me. Second thing is that you procrastinate on assignments. So if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, right, this means that once again, you feel like a fraud, you feel like you don't belong. So you're feeling like a frog, not a frog. I'm not about to jump around. But if you're feeling like a fraud, right, a fake, a phony, you're going to procrastinate on assignments. Why are you going to procrastinate on assignments? Well, you're going to procrastinate on assignments because you don't think that you are even good enough to be there. So if you think that you're not good enough to be there, why would you even try to do an assignment? All right. Once again, these are just feelings that are happening because of imposter syndrome. Once again, the question is imposter syndrome helpful? Is imposter syndrome helpful? Is this helpful? Um, Another thing that happens with imposter syndrome, imposter phenomenon, is that you over prepare. So I mentioned earlier, right? Some people might look at this as a good thing. If you over prepare, that means that you're going to do a killer job on whatever presentation, whatever homework assignment you're about to do. That's typically true. That is true. But let's think about this too, right? If you over prepare, because I've seen this happen. Not as a student, but also as a professor when I was a professor back in the day. Um, let's say this. Once again, student view. I asked, yo, I got an assignment for y'all to do. Give me a paragraph on why you want an A in this class. All right? Just a paragraph. Here's the thing about people with imposter syndrome. It might be perfectionist. That's the type of competence, what we call imposter syndrome, or soloist, one of those different things. But let's just focus on perfectionist people. So I said, yo, give me a paragraph. Why you want to be in this class? Guess what you might do, right? If you are experiencing imposter syndrome, you might say, hey, okay, he asked for a paragraph. I ain't going to give him a paragraph. What you about to give him? I'm about to give him a 5-page paper on why I deserve an A. So you're going to be researching, right? You're going to look back in the past. You're going to look through all your assignments. And then this is due tomorrow, you know what I'm saying? This is due tomorrow on the next class period. So you stay up the entire night writing this 5-page essay about why you need an A in this class, which that is great. You are killing it, right? Right? And then you get the paper to the professor, and then he's looking at you crazy because all I asked was a paragraph. So you see, right, what happens if you over-prepare? Well, let's talk about it, right? So you over-prepare. You didn't go to sleep at all last night. So when you come in the classroom, you're feeling drowsy and lazy and not paying attention in the actual class. So then what happens is that you miss the content from that class because you was over-prepared for a simple paragraph. Y'all see how this can be dangerous. Once again, the question is, for the people that's coming in, is imposter syndrome helpful? Is it helpful? So once again, we talking about over-prepare. You over-prepare, you didn't stay up. You over-prepare. Your friends asked you last night, hey, you want to head up this party real fast? Nah, I got this 5-page essay that I got to write for my class tomorrow. Now, some of your friends in that same class, they looking like 5-page essay. Didn't he say a paragraph? They already done. They about to go do whatever they about to do. But you want to do a 5-page essay. Why? Because you're over-prepared, because you haven't been experiencing imposter syndrome, baby. Okay? And then here's another thing that happens right as a student, is that you struggle. The struggle is real. So you struggle, right, to accept recognition. You better recognize, all right? Recognition. So for achievements. So you struggle to accept recognition. Y'all reckon? What am I saying right now? So you struggle to accept recognition from your achievements, right? So what does that mean? That means that, hey, you just got straight A's. You was on the principals, the dean's honor roll, whatever you want to call it. You just made the best thing that you can possibly do, right? You made the honor roll. However, because you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you can't even fail to recognize those achievements. Because once again, you feel like a fraud, you feel like you don't belong, you feel like somebody's going to call you out, like you don't deserve to be there, even though we know, based on past achievements, based on past evidence, that you rightfully so deserve to be there. However, you can't recognize that. Once again, the question is imposter syndrome helpful? If you're with me right now, just based on these little things right here, does this seem helpful? Right? Does this seem helpful? I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. So even as you get adult, right, you become adults, you're experiencing imposter syndrome and you managed to graduate. Congratulations, right? You're done with your school, your studies. That is awesome. And then, you decide to go do your job. You go ahead and do your job. So let's just say that, you was in school to become an educator. You're a teacher now. Once again, this applies to any career because imposter syndrome is experienced by at least 80% of the population at least once in their lifetime. So once again, I just don't want to make you seem like y'all crazy, because y'all not crazy. These are environmental issues that are happening here. Imposter syndrome, right? Is it helpful? Is it helpful? So let's say, all right, bam, you adult. I'm just gonna write adult. You happen to be an educator, teacher. That's the career we're gonna talk about today. You're an educator, you're a teacher. So how is imposter syndrome impacting you now on a professional level, right? You're not in school anymore, right? You got bills to pay, right? You got stuff to do. You might even have a kid or something. I don't know, all right? But you're an adult. So how is it impacting you now? So we mentioned before, right? Imposter syndrome can stop you from reaching your full potential. What does that look like as your career-wise? I see that? So you don't apply to leadership roles, right? So if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, we talked about how you won't apply, you won't reach your full potential because you're hesitant. Why are you hesitant? Because you feel like a fraud. You feel like you don't belong there. You feel like you don't deserve to be in this space, even though you could be the best teacher in the entire school and probably other people know it, but you don't think that you are the best teacher in the whole school. Or you could be the best salesman in your entire company. Or you could be the best project manager on your entire team, right? It doesn't matter, right? You are the best, but you are hesitant because you don't believe it. Therefore, you're not applying for that leadership role, even though leadership could be looking at you and they want you for that role, but you refuse to apply. Talked about over prepare as a student. Now that you're an adult, that translates to you overwork yourself. You overwork yourself, right? So you can have a due date coming up very, very soon, which is of course high pressure, high intense. However, you start to overwork yourself. You start thinking about every single little detail, which is great. Which is great. But as you overwork yourself, you don't talk to your friends. You don't call your mama. You don't say hello to your other significant other, right? Because you're just so focused on your work. It has to get done. So because you're overworking yourself, guess what happens? This is a very common thing from imposter syndrome. Leads to burnout. So burnout, just to put it simple, right, is basically as it sounds, right? You overwork your body, you overheat yourself, right? And then you burned out. You're done. And that's usually what typically happens, right? Especially because your career as an educator, right? You burnt yourself out. You showed up to all the faculty meetings, you showed up to all the things with your students. You have all your lesson plans done, you have everything done. You're overworking yourself, you're killing yourself to get the job done, but you officially burnt yourself out. I hope I ain't being too real with some of y'all. Hopefully y'all not being angry at me. The last thing, one more thing is you struggle. It sounds like I said, no, I'm talking about this with students, but you struggle to accept positive feedback. So this is very common, especially with imposter syndrome, right? You struggle to accept that positive feedback. Somebody could say, hey, you did a great job. And then you'd be like, shh, barely, right? You say different things like that. You push yourself down, not even trying to. You're struggling with that feedback. Why? Once again, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a persistent, right, feelings that you don't belong in a certain space. Even though you can have all the accolades, achievements, everything in that place and spirit. But you feel like a fraud all at the same time. So you don't accept feedback very well. Really not at all. And if you are accepting feedback, here's another critical thing about imposter syndrome, is that you give that to somebody else, right? Oh, you did a great job. Oh, no, that wasn't me. That was Larry. Without Larry, I would not have been able to even do that. Oh, you did a great job. Oh, nah, that was just luck. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Oh, you did a great job. You're going to come up with every single excuse in the book to give to somebody else, to give to something external instead of yourself. Then here's the scary part about imposter syndrome. Like I said, it limits potential, right? It limits the potential. It limits all that. Okay. So in this case, because we're talking about educators, you avoid innovative. I was trying to spell innovative. Can't figure out how to spell innovative. Innovative teaching methods. So what does that mean? You avoid innovation, basically. You don't want to try anything new. You don't want to risk anything, right? I love that word, risk. Those who are experiencing imposter syndrome do not take a risk. Why is that? Because they don't want to be found out. They don't want to be fired, right? Even though you're not going to be fired if you're the best teacher in the whole school. And you have a great attendance record, you have all the other different things. Like I said, these people if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you probably deserve to be wherever you're at. Okay, that's not the case. But you are scared to take any type of every risk in the book. Why? Because you're just scared, right? You're scared that you're going to be found out to be an imposter, which you are not, by the way. But that's what's happening. So once again, the question was, is imposter syndrome helpful? Is imposter syndrome helpful? So far, right, that's not seeming helpful at all to me. So here's a better approach when it comes to imposter syndrome. Because once again, you don't want to embrace this, right? You don't want to embrace this at all. So this is what I suggest. First thing is give yourself grace. Everybody has a learning curve, especially if you're in a field that is constantly changing. In the field, if you're an educator or something like that, it's going to be constantly something new, something different that you're going to have to learn. There's a new software that you got to learn. There's a new learning management system that you got to pay attention to. There's a new technique that you got to learn to interact with the students. There's a new way to teach the subject that you're teaching now, right? It's something constantly changing, right? And because of this, you got to give yourself grace because there's a learning curve to this. It's not easy. Another thing, right, and this deals with a type of imposter syndrome. I'm not going to go into that, but you might be scared to ask for help. Here's one thing that you got to let that go, is that you can't feel shame when you ask for help. You have to. I remember when I was first educating, I was super nervous to ask an older faculty member as far as how to do something. It was something simple too. What was it? It was, yeah, so it was simple things like I didn't know where I didn't know where the books were in the library. So just asking simple stuff, stupid dumb stuff that they would have been like, oh yeah, it's over there. Like, I don't know where the bathroom is. Bro, it's over there. But I'm too scared to ask because I don't want to feel like a dummy. Y'all see that? Once again, the question was, is imposter syndrome helpful? It doesn't seem helpful. All right, we're not we're not pushing imposter syndrome as a superpower. We're not pushing that. And then here's the last thing I want to leave with. You just gotta, like I said, give yourself grace and then just understand the mistakes is part of the game. You're gonna mess up. But it's how you react to that mess up and what you do from there. All right. So if you are making a mistake, it's okay. Learn from it, grow from it, and then continue to go. So once again, is imposter syndrome helpful? Short answer, no.